Hey, thank you all so much for joining a large group of supporters here today. And as you know, we're here today to call for the legislature to raise the smoking age to 21 and for vapor products from 18 to 21. And I just want to say that some of us were here a year ago for a press conference, and I just want to note the crowd has grown, right? The amount of support has grown dramatically. We'll be talking a little bit about that from our efforts from the last year or so. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention estimate that 1 out of 13 kids under the age of 18 will die prematurely from smoking-related causes. That's about 100,000 young people right here in Washington State. That's why we're here today. We're here today to propose a bill which, as you will see, has strong bipartisan support in both chambers that will save thousands of lives from premature smoking-related deaths. Nicotine is as addictive as heroin, it's as addictive as cocaine, and as alcohol. This common sense bill will help prevent teens from getting hooked and will make Washington State the second state in the union to raise the smoking age from 18 to 21. I want to introduce our speakers here today. Following my remarks will be Stuart Elway, right over here, who you all know for his work that he does on polling. He conducted an independent poll for the campaign for tobacco-free kids. As tempted as I am to go in the details of that poll, I'm going to show some restraint and leave that to Stuart, who is the expert. Also joined again this year, which I really appreciate, by Washington State Secretary of Health John Weisman, who was here last year. He'll be talking about the negative health impacts of tobacco use and the resulting health care costs. We'll then hear, we hope, from both of our prime sponsors. On the Senate side, it's Mark Malosha. I understand he's on the floor and may not be able to make it up. If he's not able to make it, we'll have Representative Paul Harris from the Vancouver area will step in for Mark on very short notice. And also Representative Tina Orwell, who's our prime sponsor in the House. Tina, where are you? Right here. Right behind me, excellent. Tina Orwell, our prime sponsor in the House. I do want to mention there are 10 legislators in the Senate who have signed on to the Senate bill. That's Senate Bill 6157. We have 25 legislators who have signed on to the House bill. House Bill is 2313. I'm also going to ask Mark and Tina to introduce their respective colleagues when they come up to speak as well. We're also joined by a large number of stakeholders. We won't have time to introduce everybody, but we have support from organizations like the American Heart Association, Centro de la Raza, and many others who are here today, and we greatly appreciate their support. I'll keep my remarks relatively brief and we'll turn it over to Stuart. The Office of Attorney General here in Washington State has been at the forefront on issues related to tobacco prevention for many, many years. You all recall back in the late 1990s and 1998 when then Attorney General Chris Gregoire went after big tobacco on a variety of fronts and the devastating health impacts that tobacco and nicotine have on our state's residents. From lung cancer to heart disease, cigarettes have prematurely killed our friends and our family members. The multi-state agreement that she negotiated with many other states had a huge impact on our state. It made significant changes to the advertising. You don't see Joe Camel anymore appealing to young children to buy cigarettes because of that litigation by Chris Gregoire and the Office of the Attorney General. That was a turning point in the fight against preventable tobacco-related deaths. But despite that lawsuit and all the many benefits that have flowed from that lawsuit, 8,300 Washingtonians die from tobacco every year. In addition, there is a financial cost. Every Washington household pays an average of $841 in state and federal taxes to pay for the health care costs of smoking, even if no one in that household smokes. The best way to prevent these deaths is to stop teenagers from starting to use tobacco products in the first place, and reducing access is the key. Let's be blunt, cigarettes are too easy to get if you're a minor. We're joined by Sarah, who's a Mercer Island high school student. As a minor, it is easy to get access to those cigarettes, and this legislation makes it harder for teenagers to get cigarettes from one of their biggest suppliers, 18-year-olds, 19-year-olds, 20-year-olds, in many cases kids in their high schools, who can now buy cigarettes legally. Raising the smoking age will help cut off that supply chain. We know from both experience and science that this legislation will save lives. 117 local jurisdictions around the country have already raised the smoking age from 18 to 21, including the city of New York and Independence, Missouri, and many others. Needham, Massachusetts was the first jurisdiction about 10 years ago to raise the smoking age from 18 to 21, and the results were dramatic. The teen smoking rate dropped by more than half, 3 times that of surrounding communities. Encouraged by the results of Needham, one of our most prestigious scientific authorities in the United States took a look at this issue. The Institute of Medicine released a scientific report in 2015 that found if the tobacco age for sale were raised to 21 nationwide, today's youth would experience 249,000 fewer premature deaths, including 45,000 fewer deaths from lung cancer. The Institute of Medicine reports the largest proportion of reduction in smoking we will see is among 15 to 17-year-olds. Now, if neither the experience or the science persuade you, just ask Big Tobacco. According to internal documents uncovered through litigation those years ago by the AGs around the country, an R.J. Reynolds researcher stated in 1982 in an internal memo that became public, quote, if a person has never smoked by the age of 18, the odds are 3 to 1 they never will. By age 21, the odds are 20 to 1. A 1986 Philip Morris report stated that, quote, raising the legal minimum age for cigarette purchaser to 21 could gut our young adult market, could gut our key young adult market. So here's what we know. Raising the legal age of tobacco, sale of tobacco to 21 will reduce use. Reducing use will save lives. Reducing use will save taxpayer dollars. There is strong bipartisan support to make Washington the second state in the union to raise the smoking age to 21. I want to thank all the folks who are with me here today and the audience in support of this. The momentum is obviously building. We're excited about that. And for some exciting news, I'm going to turn it now over to someone you all know, Stuart Elway.
Thank you. I'm just going to take a minute to point out some of the highlights of the survey that we did. I believe the whole report is in your packet, so I won't go into a lot of the details. We interviewed 500 registered voters in Washington State the last week of December for a margin of error plus or minus 4.5%. Asked 2 questions. We asked people, and the wording of these questions is in your packet too, so I won't do that. But we asked people if they supported raising the age of to purchase tobacco to 21. 65% said yes. The support was broad and deep. In all the demographic categories of the survey, support was above 55% and in fact was above 60% in almost all. This included Democrats at 72%, Independents at 59%, Republicans at 66% supported this. We then read arguments pro and con. The main arguments that are part of this discussion, and then re-ask the question, after having heard these arguments, would you support or oppose? At that point, 62% were still in favor, 35% opposed. The differences between the pre and post argument were not statistically significant, and support was still above 55% in every demographic category, and above 60% in most of them. So even after hearing arguments pro and con, the support for raising the age of to purchase tobacco, as I said, it was broad and deep in the state. So I'll be around for questions, but I think the whole report is in your packet.
Thanks, Stuart.
Good afternoon. I'm John Weisman, Secretary of Health, and today I'm proud to join Attorney General Ferguson in support of Tobacco 21. And Attorney General, thank you so much for your leadership on this important health issue. There is no single policy that the legislature could adopt this session that would do more to protect the health of our kids than to move the purchase age of tobacco to 21. Tobacco endangers the health and safety of all Washingtonians. More people in Washington die from tobacco-related illnesses each year than from alcohol, drug use, car crashes, suicides, homicides, fires, and AIDS combined. Tobacco hurts more than just the people who smoke. Secondhand smoke causes cardiovascular disease, lung disease, and babies whose mothers smoke during pregnancy are more likely to be born premature or suffer from sudden infant death syndrome. And tobacco particularly threatens the well-being of our kids. Middle school, high school, and college students are still undergoing significant brain development. In fact, that goes till the age of 25. Nicotine exposure during this critical time appears to affect the structure and function of the brain and may lead to lasting cognitive and behavioral impairment. Beyond the personal costs of families who lose loved ones and individuals who suffer from terrible disease, cigarettes hit our pocketbook. Each year in Washington, we spend $2.8 billion, that's a B, billion dollars, for tobacco-related health care each year. $2.2 billion in smoking-caused productivity losses. And every Washington household, as the Attorney General said, pays over $820 in taxes just for smoking that is caused by governmental expenditures. Some people seem to believe that we've done enough to prevent kids from taking up tobacco. And a few even believe that the fight against nicotine addiction is over. Sadly, this is not the case. Nicotine is not a problem that's aging out. The percentage of 10th grade youth who used cigarettes, smokeless tobacco, or e-cigarettes increased from 12.1% in 2012 to 20.4% in 2014. That's the wrong way, folks. That is a frightening 67% jump in just 2 years. Both cigarettes and e-cigarettes set kids up for a lifetime of addiction and poor health. And use of nicotine products is an issue that we've been neglecting. Funding for tobacco prevention programs in Washington state was cut drastically during the recession, and we now rank bottom of the barrel, 46 amongst the states in CDC's recommended funding levels for tobacco prevention. The most effective way to change this trend is to stop our kids from smoking before they start. The legislation that will be considered today by our state representatives does just that. Make no mistake, tobacco endangers our kids. Passing the Attorney General's request legislation is right for our kids, right for our families, right for the 90% of adult smokers who wished they had never started, and right for every taxpayer's pocketbook. Governor Inslee and I ask that you think about the health and future of the children of Washington and join us in supporting this legislation to help our kids be the healthiest next generation. Thank you.
Thanks, Secretary. So we're going to take slightly out of order. Thank you so much, Secretary Weissman, for all your support. Senator Milosha has arrived from the floor. There's some active conversations going on there. So we're going to take things slightly out of order, and he may have to slip out after his remarks. I just want to say something briefly. Both Tina Orwell, Representative Orwell, and Senator Mark Milosha have been there from the beginning on this bipartisan legislation. They've been steadfast in their support, strong supporters, working with their colleagues. I just want to say thanks. I know you're busy, and as an example of your intense interest, taking time off your busy schedule today to join us. So Mark Milosha.
Thank you very much. The Attorney General has been a wonderful leader on this thing. And I have to second his comments about the House, and specifically Representative Orwell and the bipartisan group of people here today. The leadership of the House is fantastic. And of course, getting the governor on board and the leadership from the executive branch is wonderful. But we have work to do. I talked with Senator Baumgartner, and he's willing to start the discussion in the Senate. We're going to hold a hearing on that this year. And for me, this is, if you talk to anybody about myself, it's all about saving human life and getting the metrics right. And what are the metrics in this? 5,000 kids get hooked on the smoking every year, and that is way too much. And it's personal for me. My parents and my wife's parents, both their generation, they started smoking young, continued, but it was only my parents that later in life stopped smoking. Now they're with me, both with me today. But my wife's parents were of that generation. They were unable to get off of cigarettes, and subsequently they both passed away at an age younger than me. That's the difference. That's what happens to those 5,000 kids who start smoking every year at an early age. Early death. And that is unacceptable in our state, not just for the cost reasons, but for the reasons that people we love pass away early. I wish my in-laws were here today with me like my parents, but then they were unable to stop smoking. But with the leadership right now from the Attorney General, we will address, and from the House and from Governor Inslee, we will start addressing this needed issue and save those 5,000 potential deaths each and every year, that people that start smoking. With that, I'd like to thank again for everybody for being here, and let's continue this fight and work for the day that we completely eliminate smoking here in Washington State. Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Tina Orwell from the 33rd Legislative District. Proud to be joined today by my colleagues, Representative Goodman, Representative Harris, Representative Paulette, Representative Stanford, and I think I saw Representative Magendas join us. I'm really proud of our bipartisan effort in the House to try to move this good policy forward. And I want to give a special thank you to our AG, who's just been an incredible leader on this issue. The issue of tobacco is touched my life in a personal way. I lost both my parents to diseases related to tobacco. In fact, my mom, she started at the tender age of 15, and both my parents were young. Both my parents struggled with addiction their whole lives. And she did quit when I think it was 4 years before she was diagnosed with lung cancer. So she didn't quit soon enough. And as a parent, I can tell you I have a 17-year-old and a 20-year-old. I don't want them to have the same life of addiction and health problems. I don't want any youth in our state to face this. And I feel like this policy, and we know this from other areas, can impact teen smoking. Now, my son, who's a senior in high school, has told me that these hookah pens and all these devices are all over the school. And he's seeing them in the parking lot. We know teens buy these products for younger kids, 13, 14, and 15-year-olds. And so really, we know a meaningful change is really to change the age to 21. And I just want all of our kids to have a healthy start and a healthy life. And I hope we're able to move it forward this year. Thank you.
So thanks to everyone who has spoken and joined us today. I know we have some folks on the phone. I think what we'll do is start with some questions here in the room. Allison, does that make sense? And then I will do my best to, and please remind me, I'll do my best to repeat the questions I hear in the room so that the folks listening can hear the questions. And then we'll turn to folks on the phone in case they have any questions. So we'll start, and folks should just feel free to jump in with, feel free to direct it to someone specifically, or we'll just see who best can answer it. But feel free to jump in with questions.
A lot of these statistics haven't changed from year to year from last year. What makes you think this year it'll happen? Talk about the momentum. Explain it.
Sure, I'll start, and then Mark and Tina may want to add something to that as well. It's a significant change, right? It's a bill with significant impacts, raising the smoking age, second state in the union to do it. And Tina and Mark are the experts on this, but hey, any legislative proposals, always a challenge to get through, right? That's just the nature of the business, right? And when you have one that's a significant change with significant impacts, that can be a challenge. I think part of the reason for the momentum is just, hey, it's a chance to talk to more and more folks. They see the numbers. The community builds in support in large part because of the compelling case that we can make as a result of the work of other jurisdictions, the work of scientific experts on this as well. So just the sheer number of sponsors, I mentioned 10 in the Senate, 25 in the House, the bipartisan nature of that, I think has been key for just over time, folks hearing the arguments and being persuaded by it. Mark or Tina, anything you want to add to this?
Just one thing, I think on the House side, the Republicans,
introduce yourself for the speaker on the phone.
State Representative Paul Harris. I think the Republicans on the House side are more engaged in this issue this time. I think also it's the radical increase in kids vaping in high schools is of a critical interest, and I think it's something we really need to address.
And again, that was Representative Harris for those on the phone who, everyone here has been a key leader. Representative Harris is right there at the very beginning of this as well. Speaking of I'll repeat the question, sorry I didn't do that, but the question is, what do we see for opposition to this? Mark?
Well, obviously, you know, people like the status quo. Any great or new idea, it takes leaders. Hawaii was number one with the Attorney General. I thought we were going to be number one, but maybe we can be number two. But again, it's getting that public debate. As you see, the House, the strong leadership in the House, we got that public debate. With this hearing, I hope that'll kick the public debate in the Senate and maybe put it over the top. But with your help, we'll do that.
Great, next question. And that was on the phone, now of course is Senator Malosha on the last question.
Well, I guess just following up, have you seen active lobbying against this by the tobacco industry?
I'll defer to the legislators themselves for any reaction to that. We've been joined by Norm Johnson, by the way. Thank you. Appreciate it. You want to address the active lobbying aspect of it? I think what I'm hearing from folks is haven't seen the active lobbying, Austin, to answer your question directly. In our office, I'm going to look to Mike, my legislative affairs director, Mike Webb. I've not been sort of personally lobbied on it. Mike, is there anything you want to add in terms of our office or any lobbying that we should add?
Well, Big Tobacco is not supporting the bill.
Big Tobacco is not supporting the bill. is interesting. But Austin, to be direct, it's not like I'm getting phone calls, right, to me, and it sounds like the folks like Senator Malosha are saying there's not been that active lobbying on it.
Did you say you had a young person in this age group here?
Sarah Thomas, this is Sarah from Mercer Island. If you can introduce yourself, Sarah. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Sarah Stewart. I'm a senior at Mercer Island High School. So I'm 18. I can legally buy tobacco products and give them to whoever I want to, and that's terrifying to me. So.
Why is that?
Well, on my 18th birthday, I was messaged by underclassmen asking how much it would cost for me to go pick up a vape pen for them or things like that. I think that every single day at my school when I'm leaving the parking lot, I see students driving around in their cars, vaping, passing it to other people in the vehicle, many I know who are not yet 18. And a lot of my friends experience the same thing of being asked to buy and give to younger people. So it's just clear that I'm a senior in high school and I can drastically negatively impact people younger than me.
There's some concern though that even with this measure that people your age will still go out and do it, even if it's a 21 limit.
People will always do it, right? The difference is that by raising the legal age to 21, you're decreasing youth access. Anytime you decrease access, less people are going to be able to do it and less people will do it. It's harder. They're less likely to, right? So part of the reason why it's so important to raise it to 21 is that 18-year-olds are still in the high school. So you're giving it to people that you see every single day, people you're friends with. 21-year-olds don't go to high school. Well, we can hope that they don't, right? And so that takes it out of the high school. And I believe that is 95% of people that start smoking before the age of 21 become lifelong addicts. So
Sarah, can you give your last name?
I'm Sarah Stewart.
How do you spell your whole name?
SarahStewart.
Sarah, in your orbit, how many kids are smoking a vape?
How many kids? A lot. I don't know. It seems like a lot. It seems like more every single time I look around. Vaping is definitely becoming a huge issue, right? Cigarettes generally are just not as cool anymore because people know about negative health impacts, but they're also easier to get than vape pens. They're less expensive, things like that. So a vast majority of upperclassmen, and even at Mercer Island, we had cases in the middle school of kids exchanging and selling, middle school students, 7th and 8th graders selling vape pens to each other on the buses.
If I could ask the Attorney General.
Absolutely.
The-
But by the way, I've learned my lesson. I don't think Mark or Tina or Mr. Secretary will disagree that next time we hold a press conference, just Sarah's going to be at the podium. We'll all grab a seat and a glass of water. Let her take it from
Some of the
there.
opposition has already stated that if young people can serve their country, die for their country,
Yes.
they should be able to have a cigarette.
Sure. So the question is for those on the phone, if for those who may be in opposition, if you can serve your country and die for your country, shouldn't you be allowed to have a cigarette? But thanks for asking. A couple of points on that. So number one, in Washington State, you have to be 21 to drink alcohol. We recently passed an initiative legalizing marijuana. It says you have to be 21 to smoke marijuana. And so I believe it's consistent with those ages to be at 21. It's also worth pointing out that for military bases, when the legislature adopts this law and the governor signs it, this does not impact military bases like JBLM. They set their age as they see appropriate. So currently, military personnel can buy cigarettes on military bases at the age of 18. That does not change with our state law. It does not change with military bases. That said, I think we have a copy of a letter, and I may have Mike even hand it to me if he's got it there, but there's a letter that was written to the Joint Chiefs of Staff. I'll try and get the job title of the person in the military who wrote the letter, who spent some time. We'll have a copy of his letter we'd be happy to pass out, that talked about where the military, frankly, is going when it comes to cigarette use by military personnel. And this letter really speaks eloquently to the desire of the military, talks about the adverse impacts of cigarette smoking on military preparedness, on service members as well. We've got a copy of that letter we'd be happy to hand out as well. But even the military now is trying to move towards addressing this really important issue.
And about the parallel effort at Congress to do the same?
Yes, hey, we welcome any efforts, right, to address the issue of access to teenagers for access to tobacco products. Yes, so we welcome that. But within the military, we'll get a copy of it. If I'll just do a quick, if I can. So this is a letter from the Assistant Secretary of Defense. Was writing to the Joint Chiefs. I won't read it all, but we'll share with you. But he writes, tobacco use undercuts military readiness and harms individual performance. It goes on in some detail to talk about that. He also talks at the end by talking about our goal is to dramatically reduce the use of all tobacco by 2020. It's a 2-page letter we're happy to share with you, but goes on in great detail about the adverse impacts to military preparedness with the smoking age being what it currently is.